Welcome back everyone to another tutorial. In today's tutorial, the charging enemy. The enemy will be able to detect me if I'm in its line of sight. If it hits me, it bounces me back, so you can see, but then it also resumes its patrol to the other side. You can set this up in many ways, but I just want to show you the way to set it up. What I also did is add a new death animation in which I disable the collider and make them drop, and I add a basic attack to the player. So let's get right into it. So I've set up the scene from last time. As you can see, here was the enemy from the last time, and here I made a new enemy, and I called it the enemy medium because it has a little bit more abilities. Currently the setup is exactly the same as the basic enemy, so there's no difference, or there shouldn't be, maybe a little bit in the wording, but we'll get to that. And here's the basic enemy. Now before I'm going to start setting up the more advanced, or let's say the medium advanced enemy, I want to set up on my player a normal attack. As so far we only had the shoot fireball, and what I would do is I just copied this set over to normal attack. I don't want to go step by step because it's pretty much the same. The only thing is I'm getting the input here, fire button 1, which is the mouse click, but it can also be any key down. I'm checking then the bool of the direction of the player, right or left. It's the same as with the fire attack, and the only difference is in this one, in the shoot fireball, here I'm doing, of course, the cast animation. I add a force to the player, and I spawn the, let's say, the fireball shooting to the right on the right shoot. And the difference with the normal attack is that I set an animator trigger of the attack, and I create an object which is called hit. It's a prefab hit, and I spawn it on the right shoot. And then I wait. And what is this hit prefab? I made two prefabs for this tutorial, which you have to make. There's the hit prefab, and there is the enemy hit. And the hit prefab is actually quite simple. There we go. So the hit prefab is attack, and this, let's say, damages enemies. And I did two things. I add a circle collider, which is a normal one in the middle, and I added a circle collider as a trigger used by effector, and I use a point effector 2D, which adds a little bit of force to my attack so that the enemy bounces a little bit back. So please play with this, please play with these values. And I added a FSM, which is just a very short wait, 0.2, it can also be 0.1. Should just be a couple frames where it's there, and then it destroys itself. And the enemy hit, we have it here. Oops, let's go to the enemy hit. And the enemy hit is actually the same. Also, an enemy hit is the tag enemy. And I also use it as a trigger used by effector. And here I also add force. So this I will use for the charge enemy. The moment it hits me, it spawns this a little bit in an angle below the player, and then I bounce, let's say, back. So I don't have to do too much in the FSM with adding force. I can just use a point effector 2D, which uses the circle collider as a trigger. And this has to have the attack of enemy because that will damage the player. So those two prefabs I use. And with the normal player attack, I just spawn this hit. And if I now go in, let me shortly demonstrate this. So there's the normal enemy. I just want to demonstrate the normal attack. So if I click the mouse knob, you can see it just hits the sword there. So there it is. And if I hit it now, it also bounces back a little bit, as you see. And then it disappears. And this is because of this point effector. Good. So, and now to the more interesting stuff. Let's go to the new enemy here. And we need to make a couple changes within the FSM's existing, especially the enemy movement. the direction of the enemy, and I will add one more, which is called the player detection. First of all, let's start with the direction of the enemy. What I'm going to do here is add a set bool value, and I'm going to make a new variable is facing right. And the bool value is false because it's facing left. And here I'm just going to copy this over, and I'm going to put it here. It's facing right. Here it's true. So here I have to put the bool value to true. And I just want to use this bool to know where the enemy should watch for the player. Great. So now I'm going to add one FSM, and let's call this FSM player detection. And the player detection FSM looks very similar to the direction enemy, because I'm going to make one to the left. And here I'm going to start with get FSM bool. I'm going to use the owner. Player detection, no, not player detection, direction enemy, and then is facing right, store value, new variable, then let's just also call this is facing right. There we go, and we're going to do this every frame, and then I'm going to add a bool test, and the bool test is facing right, it should be here. And if facing right is true, then I turn right. So I make a new event. Turn right, add transition, turn right. And I'm also going to do this every frame. And now, here comes now the player detection part. Is where I'm going to add a raycast 2D. Raycast 2D, and here I need to do some things. So on the basic enemy I also had the left raycast, right raycast, and also on the enemy medium I have the same right raycast and left raycast. So, and we're going to start from a specified game object, and because this is left, I'm going to use the left raycast. I don't need any position. The direction I need though, this is minus 60, which is, let's say, the horizontal direction here. Space is in the world, and the distance is, let's put 5, but you can play around with this. And the moment I hit something, a new event which is called charge player left. But when the question is, which hit event should it do? And for that, I need, of course, a layer mask. I'm only going to look in one layer mask, and I'm pressing here. And then I want to look in the player layer mask, because the player is has the layer player. If it doesn't have it, set it. If you have it on default, then make sure that you look for default. The only problem is if you hit other things which have, let's say, the same tag, it will trigger this event. So be careful with that. Let's make a debug color, perhaps make it red so we can see where it's going. Yes. So this is then set up, and then I have to add a transition which is called then charge player left. And from there we're going to move on to a new state here. And let's also make that state right away. This will be a send event. And the event target is a game object FSM. I'm going to use the owner. And I'm going to do this in the enemy movement. We're going to send the event. And I already made it, but just press here new global event and then make attack left. And you add the attack left here. And there won't be any delay. We're just going to call this attack left. And here I'm going to add a transition. Whoops, not attack left. When I add a transition, it's just finished. And here I'm going to do a wait state, because I don't want to trigger it right away again, because once it sees the player, it will go very fast. So I'm just going to say there's cooldown of 2 before you can trigger it again. And if correct, the whole attack or the charge should be finished in 2 or make it 3. And then we're gonna go back to finish. Great. So now let's copy this one over. Copy, paste. No, it's not the start. And let's call this one right. Right. And here, of course, turn right, I would like to remove these transitions just to make it clean. The raycast should now be 60, so the other direction. And the spawn point should be right raycast. So that's one thing we have to be careful for. And here we're going to do, instead of, let's say, is true, turn right, we have to make a false, and in case of false, we're gonna turn left. Is facing right, is then false, then we should turn left or look left. There we go. And with the charge player left, let's make here also just a new one, and let's call it charge player right, just to keep it organized. Add transition, charge player right. And then I'm just gonna copy and paste the tag left. Just gonna connect it here, and let's call it attack right. And instead of send the event attack left, I'm gonna make the event attack right. Again here a global event. And then I'm just gonna copy over the weight. This is weight 2, which is fine, and I'm back. Now to see if it's actually working, we should of course also turn on the debug here, so that you can see there is actually a line, and also here. And if we have a look right now, you can see that there is a red line there, and now the red line disappears because it triggered. And of course it's not so really easy to see if I'm doing this full screen, so let's just put it here, and you can see it went there, it sent an event, but of course in the movement there is no event currently to react on this. But with this red line, it's already detecting the player. And I made it in a sense that it only detects it in front. You can of course add other lines as well to detect upwards, sideboards, and whatnot. Great, so let's now move on to the actual movement of the enemy and the enemy attack the moment it detects the player. So here's the enemy movement, moving to the right and to the left, and it turns based on the same principle here. If it's not grounded, it will wait and it will turn around. And the moment it's moving to its left, to the left side, and I detect the player left, I want to have an attack as well to the left. So I'm going to add here the global transition, which I made earlier, which is attack left. And within the attack left, let's call this charge left. So, and here I'm going to add a couple of things. So first of all, I'm going to add velocity. Oh, no, not add, set velocity 2D. And I'm just going to remove this here. Game object owner, and the X, let's make it fast. Let's do -10. And I'm just going to do every frame. And what I did on the enemy here is I set a couple of colliders, these two, which are triggers. So this is not this is enemy body tag, so not an attack. So if I just hit this body from the back, I won't get damage, but I can trigger with these colliders something. So let's do trigger 2D event. And on the trigger 2D event, I'm going to add the player, and then we're going to send, let's say, attack. Just going to add that. And what I also want to do is move left, because it's still moving left. I still want to just get the FSM here, these two, get FSM direction grounded, because I still want to check for the ground. Otherwise, it just charges and it just runs off the cliff. I'm just going to go grounded, and in case of false, I'm just going to say turn here. And I made this turn event, which is just a normal event, but it can also be the finish. But the turn event, I just want to connect then here to the weight. So I set its velocity to 0, and restart patrol is then a positive figure going in the other direction again, moving right. So the moment it stops, the moment it charges, and it didn't hit me, but it's not grounded anymore, it stops, and then it moves back to its normal patrol, right? I could also add a weight here, and this is not here, sorry, here. You could also say after a certain period, let's say after 4 seconds, I also turn. So if you, for example, make it much longer here, that's a long plane, and you don't want the enemy just to keep following you forever, that after a certain amount of time, it will just turn. But of course, realize that as long as you're in front of the enemy and into the red line, it will just restart this cycle. So, but anyway, you can just add this, right? Then let's add here a state which is called damage player. And the damage player is the create object, and game object is then enemy hit, which I explained earlier, and the spawn point is the player. And because I'm from the left here, I want to make an offset position, and I'm just gonna say 0.5, which is, let's say, a little bit to the right side of the player, and maybe also minus 0.2, a little bit below the player. And of course, I need to do this in the opposite when I make, let's say, the right side there. And this will just damage the player. And then I want to slow down, let's say, the enemy, because it has to show a little bit the effect that it hit me. So let's just set the velocity here, set velocity to D, and just gonna, not this one, sorry, do -2, because it's still moving in the same direction. And then after a short wait of, let's say, 0.5, I want to finish, and I will restart my patrol. I could also, of course, make it wait, but then it faces still in the left direction, and the moment I'm getting hit back and it detects me again, it will restart the cycle. So I only want to slow it down shortly, so I might even want to shorten this to 0.3. So it bounces me, and then it looks the other side, and it restarts patrolling to the right side. So because it hit me once. But this is of course also up to you. You can also make it in a way that it will just keep on ramming you and just keeps on attacking you. So this is, I just want to show the flexibility, what you could do here. Of course, you can also add some effects here. I could add here, for example, create object. The game object is maybe here the sprite. Game object, no, spawn point sprite. And I want to add this jump here as well. A little bit of smoke. And the position offset is actually quite nice. You can just do -1, so the smoke is a little bit below it, or however you like. I'm just gonna put it here randomly and see what happens. Great. That was now, let's say, the left side. And now I have to, let's say, repeat everything for the attack right, which is then here. And there, of course, I'm going to now just copy these things. So, and instead of -10, speed will be 10 every frame. Just have to be sure. I have to add the attack transition, direction grounded. This is fine. turn, transition, and also the wait for turn. And the turn should then also go then to this wait, and the attack should go then to damage player. Whoops. What happened there? And let's try just to set it up in a similar way. And in this case, I want it minus 0.5, spawn it a little bit to the right of it. And afterwards, slow down. Just gonna copy paste this here again. And gonna connect it and restart. And slow down here is then 2, 0.3, and -1. This is fine. Great. And attack left, attack right. And let's also name this state, of course, charge right. So there you have it. This is now the setup of this enemy. And now the moment of truth. Let's test this. And let's maximize it. Oh no, let's not maximize it on. Let's first check if these FSMs are working correctly. So now it's here, walking, and the moment, whoops, see it tried to charge me, tries to charge me again. And you can see the cooldown of the red line. But let's see now if it hits me. There we go. So the moment I get hit, it's just stopped a little bit. You could make this longer because the red line won't be back that fast. So you can make it face you a little longer. And as you can see, there is a nice bounce to it. And it's working well. So let's maybe do the slowdown or this wait for 1, just to see if it's working well. And let's say the player detection is 3 seconds. It's quite long. I think that's enough. 3 seconds in the game is a long time. And let's this time maximize. And let's see what it does now. Oh, great. Bounced me off, so it has the desired effect of charging. And boom, it just keeps moving and then it moves back. Yeah, that's quite nice. And then you have, of course, the particle effect again. Shit. Okay. And of course, I can also just attack the enemy. And it can still charge me. And then I killed it. And one different effect I made to this enemy's health is here. Is the moment I kill it, what I do is I disable the collider for which it needs to, let's say, be on top of the platform. And I add a force, so I bounce it up a little bit. And then I play a sound of me shouting no. And I disable the enemy movement, FSM. And this is a quite fun one. What I do is I add here a weight. No, I don't add a weight, that's not fun. I add a random float between -5 and 5. And that's the rotation angle. And I now rotate the picture when it starts falling. And then at some point I destroy the object after 2 seconds. Okay, that's why there was the wait. But perhaps you want to see this one more time in action. Duh. Great, so that's how you make a basic enemy with a charging ability. And as you can imagine, you are quite flexible with how you set this up further. And in the next tutorial, I want to work a little bit more on these different enemy types and try to make them a little bit more advanced. And of course, the FSMs are getting more complicated over time. But that's why please follow along slowly, do one enemy at a time. And what I'm trying to do is always build based on the last setup of the last enemy. Great. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you liked the video. And I see you all next time. Ciao.